Hello friends and welcome to the channel. It's Angela, the Traveling Crafter, and I am here with another Bolo video. Be on the lookout for. And those are based on books that I have found either in the wild or have collected over the years. And this one's going to be with a little bit of a twist. So I have two really cool books that I want to direct your attention to, and they're all about feed sacks, as you can tell. I also have an abundance of Feedsack, which you can see here. This is an original Feedsack. And I wanted to do a little history lesson so you could understand and know what to be looking for if you are out and about and you find something that you think might be Feedsack in the wild. So that's what we're going to do today. But before we get started, a quick shout out to everyone who is newly subscribed and everyone who has been around and supported my channel and my adventures. I appreciate you, each and every one of you, very, very much. So thanks for being here. All right. So the first one is just a small book. It's only, half an inch thick. It is called Feedsack Secrets. It's by Gloria Nixon. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Gloria is from somewhere in Kansas. This was published by Kansas City Star Books in Kansas City, Missouri, and it was this is a first edition, first printing, and I don't know if they still make it, and why does it not have a copyright date? Oh, 2010. So it's not that old. And she has done a lot of, here we go, we'll find out where she's from. Gloria is a quilt history researcher who especially enjoys studying individuals and the contribution each made to the quilting history. She's a member of the American Quilt Study Group, Iowa, Illinois Quilt Study Group, and the Feedsack Memories Discussion Group. It doesn't, we're just going to say she's from, rural Waubonsee County, Kansas. So, let me just talk a little bit about the book, and then later we'll talk more about kind of the history. I marked some pages. But this is a great book if you want to learn about the history of feed sacks. I got interested many years ago when my mom had gifted me all of my great-grandma Amelia's feed sack fabrics and projects. And before that, I had collected many quilts. And so I had a lot of it, but I didn't know a lot about the history. So this book was great. I have not had this for a long time, but it was a great addition to my collection. This is not one that I will be cutting up because I like to reference it. But if you do, these would be great for either identification of fabrics and or to use in your journals. Maybe you'll find one that's not in great shape or something like this. But it's got all of these wonderful advertisements. It's got all of these wonderful colors of the different feed sacks throughout the years. And so I would highly recommend this if you or someone, these advertisements are adorable, that also has a desire to obtain feed sack fabric or just has a love of the beauty of all of them. Here's the gingham girl. We'll talk about her in a second. So this one is wonderful. Again, by Gloria Nixon, 2010, issued by the Kansas City Star Quilts. And I would highly recommend this. Now, I'm going to say these are, if you find one of these in the wild, run, don't walk, because they are not inexpensive. But they are absolutely treasured books of mine that I've just started collecting in the last, probably 4 to 6 months. I had one that was, I'm not even going to say when I got them, but all sparked by my friend Carrie the Paper Monkey, who had found a magazine by this company called Uppercase. And lo and behold, I learned that they have all of these encyclopedia of blank. And so we've already done a couple of these. If you haven't yet seen those videos, I would suggest hopping over to my playlist that is on Bolo. Be on the lookout books. Do I need to say more? You open up the cover and it's absolutely gorgeous. Now, the theory with these books, this is more of a history of the Feedsacks. However, and this one was printed, third printing in 2019. And the email or the website is encyclopediaofinspiration.com or uppercasemagazine.com if you want to go searching for it. Now, normally, a lot of these encyclopedia books and that compendium book, especially the compendium book, had featured artists. But this, you can tell, has all of how they were used, the patterns, the quilts, the end of the era, which was in the mid-50s-ish, when they weren't quite as desirable, back in the Depression, and all of that good history about the Feedsacks. Now, I have to admit, I have not read a lot of this one yet because it's a new... Oh, look at those girls in their Feedsack dresses. But it is chocked full of gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous images, like they all are. They aren't as inexpensive as we would probably like for what we use them for. But if you're a collector, like I said, this is an investment that I would highly recommend. And if you find it in the wild and you can get it for a really good price, then by all means, I would. Oh, look at these. Oh, girls and guys, these would be cute in as tags. I don't know if I can cut these up. I don't know if I can cut this book up. Maybe I'll hope that I'll find another one of these in the wild and then I can do that. But this one I don't think is going to ever see a pair of scissors, that's for sure. But as you can tell as I'm flipping through this, oh, this is a great place to start when we talk about the history. But before I do that, I'll keep my finger here. And I think back here somewhere. Yeah, see? Look, full pages of patterns. Pretty cool. So if you never are able to find real Feedsack and, you know, the fabric, then you've got an alternative. But let's just talk a little bit about the history. And so what I'll do is I have a big stack of examples over here, and I'll show you some of those. I'll show you what reproduction Feedsack looks like, and we can talk about a little on how to identify it. And then I'll tell you a little bit. You'll want to stay tuned as to what I'm going to do with my stash of, and this is important, what I'm going to do with my stash of Feedsack fabrics. So Feedsacks were predominantly popular from the 1920s to the 1950s. And in the 1800s, and I don't know when in the 1800s, but a lot of rural farmers started making, and you can kind of tell by these look like they're hand sewn. They started making their own Feedsacks out of burlap because they were rural and they were easier to transport via horse. So while there's no rural farmer that's been contributed to the start of Feedsacks, they were used before they were patented. And they were not patented until 1924. And in about 1845 or 6 or something like that, if you've ever heard of Elias Howe, he actually created the first, it was called a lock stitch sewing machine. So companies that started using Feedsacks in, you know, the latter part of the 1800s were able to sew a really tight seam on these and make a more, you know, a better construction than what these rural farmers were making. So that kind of sparked a little bit of seeing them more and more. And when I talk about, they were called commodity textile bags. When we talk about commodities, we're talking about sugar, flour, dog food, grains, those kind of things that were... Even I read somewhere, probably in this other Feedsack Secrets, that they sometimes put sausages in them. I think that sounds disgusting, but apparently there was a way that they could do it. But what happened is in 1924, a patent was created. And it was created by a guy by the name of Asa Bales in 1924. And he was also from Missouri. But when he was creating the bags and was creating the patent, he had some requirements. And the requirements were that they had to be a size that was suitable. They had to be a size that was suitable to be made into clothing. So remember, we're talking 1924. The Depression was upcoming. Missouri, they had the Dust Bowls. There was a big problem with livestock, and there was a whole revolution about the government buying livestock because of the cattle were dying, and to try to preserve that and preserve the country. And so things were getting tight. And so it was a way for these fabrics to be reproduced in a way that the housewives could then take those feed sacks that their husbands or whomever had purchased for the use in their home or in their farms, and do something with them. And so his other requirement was that they have, they be made of gingham in cotton, and they needed to be like gingham, check, stripes, and have at least 2 or more colors. And lastly, his final recommendation was that whatever the company that was making those sacks, that if they were putting their brand on it, that they were made with so they could wash away. So that they had like a soluble vegetable ink in them, so that they once they were empty, they could be washed and then made into curtains or dresses or quilts or whatever. And so the interesting thing is, like, the husbands in the or maybe the sons or brothers, if they were going to pick up commodities for their farms, they got points if they were picking maybe 100-pound bags of flour, and they were getting them in the same pattern, so that they wouldn't have to piecemeal, like this is, a couple of patterns into one dress, for example, or into curtains and such. So that's kind of the history of that. So those guys, they got special attention. They probably got some extra cornbread at dinner time for making the extra effort. So the first it's in here, is the great example of this is Gingham Girl. Now, this was a George Plant milling product, but notice that they didn't use their brand, as it was, Plant Milling Company. They used the actual Gingham Girl to entice those people who were buying it, especially if they wanted to be making other things about it. So they weren't with it. So they weren't really advertising to the farmer or the man of the house. They were really marketing to the women and children, or girls or guys in the house, so that they could use those in every way possible. And here's an example of the little Gingham Girl from Plant Flour Mill. So that's kind of cool. So eventually what happened is that the popular designs ended up being sold in stores by the yard. So if they if a company had 10 different designs, it was all flour, but they sold one like this, for example, with the blue flowers, then they would consider making those into yardage, and you would later see those in like Sears and Roebuck and things like that. Now, here's an interesting fact that I think is kind of funny. So, the average, I think I have it. Yes, right here. The average 100-pound bag was 36 by 42, and that was about 1 to 1.5 yards of fabric. Typically, to make a dress, it would take about 3 yards to make one dress. So if you've ever heard of the phrase, she's a 2 Feedsack girl, it was kind of in the day bragging rights to say that you were a size 2 because it only took 2 Feedsacks in order to make your dress versus the average, which was 3. So little known fact, but I think it's kind of funny. In the 1930s, they started to develop pastels. So yes, there is Feedsack that is pastel. Now, I don't think I have any examples of that, but it does exist, and I'll show you in a little bit how to tell if it's real Feedsack or not, which is kind of hard to do because you don't find a lot of pieces like the one that's below me that is an entire Feedsack, but I'll do my best. They also, at that point, introduced more calicos and more ginghams, and initially the calicos were not that popular. And then, eventually, but still in the 1930s, companies like Bemis, there's 2 of them. Maybe I'll see them in here. But they started introducing like the fancy prints. And again, they were advertising, more, it was more than the, it was more advertising that design versus the commodity that was inside of it. So, and this one, I wanted to read this. This is Hansel and Gretel print. Also, that's this one. Also available in convenient 6 and 12-pound sizes. The labels have the PK logo for Percy Kent Bag Company. This one looks like it's actually been sewn on. See that? How it's kind of come up from there? So maybe some of them were, you could take them off and use a seam ripper or whatever. Later, in like the 40s, there was a gentleman by the name of Miller, I think. And he heard that people were complaining because there was... things were scratchy, really, really scratchy. And so they actually, changed and started making more of the kids' fabric, more soft cottons. They did some square patterns because they knew that people were making them for quilts. And that's kind of where the cottons got, like, this is more, I would say, closer to a burlappy feel. It's not. I mean, it's softer than that, but it's still, I could see where it might be scratchy. Now, after so many washings, it probably got softer. But here's some more examples of, like, this is a Feedsack. This Feedsack is apparently very rare, but it's got the pattern to make an apron. The kitchen merry-go-round apron. Now, also, the interesting thing is that stores like department stores, grocery stores, bakeries, things like that, they were also selling like the white, just the white pieces as tea towels. I didn't get any of those out. Maybe I did. I don't think I did. We shall see. These I thought were really cool. 1935 and 1936, at a San Diego exposition, they introduced these doll patterns. So I have never seen one of those in real life, but man, are they cute. Look at how cute those are. So you can see there's the Bemis doll. The cool part about it is later on, during World War II, during the Depression. So later in the 40s-ish, they would actually, here we go, they would actually host bag parties, like later in the 40s, and women would get together and they would trade their patterns so that they could have a consistent pattern to make one set of curtains, dresses, quilts, whatever it might have been, or, you know, just quilts. And then eventually in the 40s, they also, depending on the pattern, that added 5 cents to every single one of the commodities of the product. So that's kind of an interesting story. And then in 1949, they started to introduce zippers. So you can kind of identify, if you find a full feed sack and it has a zipper in it, that it was probably from 1949 or after. Starting I'm not sure when in the 50s, but they started to become less popular. And, you know, people could get their hands on fabric more inexpensively. And, you know, the mail order catalogs were becoming bigger, but, you know, you kind of get the gist. Now, this one is from Bemis in Kansas City. It's a 48-pound bag of Clyde's Best Flour bleached. So this is in, Clyde is a town, I've actually been there. Clifton is where my part of my family grew up. And so Clyde, Kansas, this was one that was from my grandma. And this was an original. It didn't have the patterns in it. But that is, and it's got the Bemis logo right there. And so you can see they're open. You can tell a feed sack, generally, let's see, yeah. This is where it would have been sewn together. You can kind of see that. And you would also, if somebody took this apart, you would be able to see those seams in there as well. So let me show you another one. Now these are the ones that wouldn't have had, you know, any, like I said, this one is heavier. You can kind of tell. This is a sugar bag. It's seen its better days. Pure granulated crystal sugar. But again, you can tell it's got a really raw edge, and you can see the stitching right there. So if you get a piece that's, you know, a design, look at how rat-a-tat-tatty that is, but I love it. And it's already been cut up. Look and see if any of those raw edges look like they've already been sewn together. So this one is a 100-pound bag. So again, going back to that, you would need an average of 3 yards. So if each 100-pound bag was a yard to a yard and a half, you know, you would need 3 of these bags in order to... So you'd have to go through a lot of sugar, which I suppose they probably did go through a lot of sugar back then, before you'd have enough to make a dress. You'd have to be patient, I suppose. But here you can tell this is the bag. It's, you know, starting to tear a little bit. And then this is the top of it. Let's see if we can see. This one you can't really tell where the stitching was. But you get the idea. So let's look at a couple of other things. And I don't know. I'm going to leave this here and hopefully it'll be okay. So, oh, I do have some solids. And I'm not sure that these are actual feed sacks. I think these might just, or feed sack fabric. I think these might, this one may be, this one I do not think it is. I think it's just regular cotton, but those would have been kind of similar. Here is an example of a quilt square that might have been made using the feed sack. Here is another one. These are all together. So these would have been your pastels with just the white flower sacks. And this one actually, it looks like somebody maybe later in life took some of these old ones and made it into a quilt square. These are all hand stitched, I believe. Yeah. And you can, yeah, it's pretty easy to tell. They're not quite as consistent, but there's some examples of what that feed sack would look like. And then here's a few more that are originals. This one is just a piece of cotton, and it's already been cut out. So there's that one. This one is another piece. I don't think it's very big, but there you go. And I'm just looking on all these to see, because like that raw edge looks like it was probably the top of the Feedsack. So there's that one. Here is a hand mitt. This was actually my great-grandmother's, made from some Feedsack. I don't know if you can tell that. Isn't that pretty? I'm keeping it just like that, but you know. Here's some more. This is a nice, heavy piece of cotton. Would have been cute for a summer dress. And let's see. Now, some of these, I'm sure that they've cut them down. I did get a few of these pieces, and I honestly don't remember which ones, this summer at an estate sale. They were very expensive, and they went fast. Like, there were hundreds of them, and I only got a few. Here's a small completed Feedsack. So I'm not sure on these which ones were from my grandma and which ones of these bigger pieces were. I know the oven mitt. There you go. You can see that really well. There you go. So you can see this. This would have been, and they've already used part of it. But that, and you can tell, like this, I mean, it's durable cotton, but it's really not that thick. So it would have been nice for, you know, summer kind of weighted dresses. Isn't that pretty? The daffodil. Here's another one. This one's a little bit thicker. This is a big one. This must be 100 pounds. Yeah, for sure. And let's see. I'm just going to look on here just to see. Oh, you can. Oh, that's awesome. So can you barely see where the original design or the label? Golden bag, and it's got a rooster on it. That is cool. See, now you know why I hoard these. So let me tell you about what I'm gonna. Well, I'll tell you in a second when I show you the other pieces. So there's another piece, but a little bit different design, but still the daffodils. Maybe made. Let's see. Maybe we'll see a label on this one. I don't know. It's pretty light. Oh, maybe this is just. Well, no, it's still different than the other one. No, I don't see any. No writing. But those are some originals, and this one is as well. There you go. And this is a little lighter cotton. The other way to kind of tell is by texture. If you put a reproduction piece next to a vintage piece, there is, in a lot of cases, a difference in the feel. Now, of course, it's going to depend on how much it's been washed and that kind of thing. But here are some examples of some. I don't think that one is. I don't know how that got in there. But these are some examples of what some reproduction Feedsack fabrics or similar to. I think my grandma made this. My son has a quilt made out of this. I don't know. Yeah, I'm sure. All those fabrics were in it. And those are all reproductions, as is this. And you can just tell the feel of it. I don't know that this would have been a reproduction, but it was in that little stack. So at least it gives you a little bit of an idea. There is nothing wrong with those reproduction fabrics. They're absolutely beautiful. You can find them readily. They still make them all over. So here's an example of an antique. This is a pillowcase. And this is all made from Feedsack. It's a big one. Now, quite honestly, well, no. Okay, so here's what it looks like on the back. So it is quite possible that this might have been the Feedsack and they cut it apart because it's about the size of what a Feedsack would be. It seems bigger than a regular pillow. And then they made these quilt squares and the top to kind of round it off. But isn't that gorgeous? So a couple of things that I am going to do while I have these out that I have had on my list for a very long time. I'm going to do some digitals for you because I think that this is something, this is something that will never get cut up. But it is absolutely beautiful. I really should have this on display somewhere. And I'm going to have, it won't be a lot, but I'm going to have a couple of bundles, which you're going to see in just a few minutes, of the Feedsack, because I have a lot and I need to share a little bit of it. I know it's kind of hard because it's most of my grandma's, but so this is one of my quilts that I have, and you can tell this is all hand stitched, made from Feedsack fabric. Lots of time, all of this. You can tell that these are Feedsacks. You can feel it. My mom and I both have a lot of antique and vintage quilts, and most of them we're kind of drawn to the Feedsack fabric. So the eras of the late 20s, the 30s, and the 40s. So and this is a big one. I mean, that was for like a double bed or more. So I keep this on display in my family room downstairs. All right, so let's get into, we'll start with this. These are the pieces that I will be creating some bundles. Now, I can tell you that the circles will not be, because these were my great-grandma's, and I have a bag full of finished yo-yos from her. But I did want to show you some of the varied fabrics. Oh, there you go. You can see the lines where it was cut open. My great-grandma had a lot of children, and money was tight. This seems like, no, it is. It's the real deal. Okay. So you can see why this would be so economical. You're using every piece and part. Now, if we all sewed and were seamstresses nowadays, gosh, that would certainly save the planet if we packaged, oh, look at that, packaged more of our things in reusable cotton or fabric or whatever. I don't know. The FDA probably has issues with that. I don't know. So there you go. You kind of see. Ooh, look at that. There are a couple pieces in this. So these I will keep. I need to continue. I have a few of these in my sewing stuff for travel when I'm in the mood, that I will take and then make the yo-yos. But man, I do not like to cut things out, so that helps a ton. Now, I question whether these they feel like they're Feedsack, but I would say if they were probably purchased by the yard, because there's a lot of it. And they feel a little bit softer. So my guess is on these, if these are Feedsack, that they are newer. And then there's this polka dot too. Definitely Feedsack. So here's some just little pieces and parts. And then apparently some directions to make a quilt or something. That were in there. Look at that. So if I wanted, I guess, let me see. I wonder if we can identify. I have not done that, but it would be interesting to see if we can find how, but I don't see where this one says. There's the Buck and Bronco. I'm not seeing. Here's your tablecloth material. Oh, I thought it would have been fun if I found one right off the bat, but, you know, we don't want to be here all day. But, and then there's your basic gingham, your cotton polka dots. Again, I think these might have been newer. This, I think, is, well, this is reproduction. I can tell. Here, these, I think, were flowers. I think I might have maybe a finished one, but these would have been the middle of the flower. More of that. Okay, so these are just scripts and scraps. And then this was, all of these are put together with a pin, and they're all ready to be sewn into a quilt. You know, that's not going to happen by me, but, and some of these, you know, may have come from other things that aren't necessarily Feedsack entirely, because I'm sure that they just used what they had from wherever they could get it, but it's all vintage or antique fabrics. Aren't those gorgeous? So yeah, I'm going to make a couple of bundles of these. So we got all of those. Look at those colors. I mean, couldn't you just like look at this all day long? I sure could. All right, now the last box is kind of, this is the flower one I was telling you about. So look at these. These are somewhere, yeah, this is sandpaper. And I'm sure they put it on there because it stuck to it better when they were making their templates. So there are all of these, and I just love going through these. And I just think it would be cool. Let me see, what was that? I don't know what that was supposed to be, but wouldn't it be cool to do some pockets or side tucks, or even just a, you know, half floral. Okay, this combination doesn't go very well, but you know, you could do a whole page and do a circle in the middle. Oh my goodness. So I'm also committed. Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. Also, these would make really cute clusters. You could make, you know, ties for your journal. You could cover your entire journal. That's what I need to do. I just had an idea. Ooh, somebody wrote on that one and didn't get it in the right spot. But let me just grab my school days. You know what would be cool to do is, okay, make half of your flower here. You know, let's just put 2 of these on there. And then make a great big, maybe cover the spine here, and then make a big circle to make the center of the flower, and then do the same on the other side. And now you've covered your journal. Oh, the possibilities, they're endless, I tell you. Okay, so some of the more cool things that I have in here, I want to show you. These are very fragile. Again, I'm assuming these were going to be a quilt, but check this out. Each one of them, the pattern was from a newspaper or catalog, perhaps. So just as pretty as each of the pages is this catalog, probably a Sears catalog. Isn't that cool? And again, these were from my great-grandma. And then, oh, we got more petals. A whole nother pile of petals. And the colors are just, there's just so many. And so now I understand why people would get together and have these parties, because, you know, there's so many designs. And I wonder what the expense was. All right, so now let me show you this. This was in here. That was in here. I don't think those yellow ones were no. And this. So this was their butterfly pattern. And in here, oops, that doesn't fold, are 3 different designs. I'll show you the one that, there's only one that was finished, and I framed it, and I'll show that to you. It's in my craft room. So these are all, have already been hand stitched. Look how tiny I've just barely turned it over. But there's all of these cute little butterflies. Look at that one. Again, I need to be using these and not hoarding them. It's redonkulous. And then there are all of these. These are all, let's see, are all of these? These are all sewn? Oh my, this whole stack is sewn. I thought I had a bunch that weren't. Maybe those are coming up. Ow, I just poked myself. All right, so for example, oh, these are the ones that aren't sewn. Just a few that are not sewn yet. Let's just do this so you can see. These are all of their little bodies. So see what I'm saying? This is ridiculous. I'm not using these. And here's one that it might look partially in progress, where they have done a blanket stitch on it. We're working on it. And then there are these great big ones. As well. And that is the one that I have framed. Let me show you, because it was complete. I should have got that out in advance. There's more. There's more butterflies. Oh, you're dusty. You're really dusty. But here you go. That's what a finished one would look like. Isn't that cool? Very, very cool. And that's a big old butterfly. And then underneath here, oh, there's more sandpaper. And the pattern for the this cute little body. And then these are all in here. Oh, we even got some crewel and an old spool of thread. But here we go. So I hope you guys have enjoyed a little bit of a history lesson as well as a Bolo for Be on the Lookout books. I'll show them again. But let me know what your favorite thing was. Let me know if you too are a collector of Feedsack fabrics and the history of, if you enjoy the history of fabric. I hope you did. And I'm going to show those books, excuse me, one more time. Put these up here. And here we go. Our Feedsack fabric. What did I do with the other one? Oh, it's right here. Uppercase books, Feedsacks. And this is the Encyclopedia series. And this is from 2019 by Uppercase Publishing. And then the other one is by Gloria Nixon from 2010. And it is Fashion from Hard Times, Feedsack Secrets. So friends, until next time, I hope you take a little moment to just be, and we will see you soon. Cheers.